Hello, I'm Dr. Richard Scott Noakes, and as part of our continuing series, talking with pioneers in digital writing, editing, and publishing, we have here Peter Konieczny. Now, he began as a former librarian and a researcher and editor and a writer of history books for children. And then he started his first website in 2001. After that, things began to snowball, and he, in 2008, was one of the founders of MiddleMedivist.net. And MiddleMedivist.net is the leading website for news and articles about medieval studies. It has an award-winning podcast. It has a video associated with it, and has been successful for these many years. And he's also, in addition to that, a successful editor of a print magazine, Medieval Warfare Magazine. So thank you for joining me today, Peter.
Well, thanks for having me.
Give us a little bit of your history. How did you get involved with writing, editing, and publishing for digital media?
When it comes into, I was a librarian, I always had an interest in medieval history and history in general. I thought when I was in university, I was just going to become a professor of history, and then I realized that would be a terrible idea. But I wanted to keep myself involved. And back in 2001, there's an opportunity to become the website editor for the Society for Medieval Military History. And they said, "Oh, okay, we need somebody to do it." I kind of volunteered, and they said, "Okay, do what you need to." So I cracked open the first article on how to make a website. A couple weeks later, I crafted something really kind of terrible together, but people were slightly impressed, and I kind of ran with it because they didn't say I couldn't do it. So I wound up putting up hundreds of articles and primary sources. I got permission to do it all, but this was in 2001 was a time when there wasn't many academic articles online or primary sources online. You just couldn't find it. So we wound up becoming, for a while, a very big website for people interested in Middle Ages, and if you're interested in military history. So we wound up, I kind of did that until about 2004, 2005. I was really heavily involved in that. And I kind of started getting involved in other kind of web projects related to medieval studies. And me and a partner at that time decided that, we wanted to get a website and a kind of digital media for everyone interested in Middle Ages. So from academics to history writers to gamers, anyone that had that kind of slight interest, and kind of bring them together in a kind of community and kind of give them resources. And that kind of became MiddleMedivist.net. It started in 2008. And it's kind of been growing stronger. It's kind of changed over the years. But yeah, as you said, right now, we kind of consider ourselves like the kind of niche leader in medieval studies. We get about, we're just about 500,000 page views a month, 250,000 users. They come in and use our content on the website. Plus, we've kind of done now 3 different podcasts we are under our umbrella, and things like that, and some bit of YouTubing, and just trying to kind of be that kind of media voice in that niche. So not too bad.
So when you first started the first website before MiddleMedivist.net, did you do any writing for that, or was that strictly you were just basically we didn't have the phrase content editor then, but were you basically the content?
I was the content, in terms of writing. You didn't. I never thought of myself, I'm going to do writing, although I wound up doing lots of introductions. Mm-hmm. So you get permission to publish this little piece, and then you kind of have to introduce it. So you're writing a paragraph here, paragraph there. You wind up at just trying to figure out. It's more your job is collecting and finding resources and putting it together. So you're trying to get other people to do work for you. So
now it almost seems quaint to say this today, And 2008 was not that long ago. But when you and Sandra Alvarez, who was your partner at the time, decided to make MiddleMedivist.net, you were kind of entering into a space where there wasn't anything before, right? So how did you think that was going to go, and how did that work out differently than you expected?
There have been attempts by scholars, like people like in academia, to create this kind of like meta website for everything medieval. But for various reasons, they never like kind of lasted more than a year. It occurred to me that if we wanted to get something, it had to have a financial reward to it. It wasn't something you could do to get like tenure at the university. So if you're going to work for it, it's going to have to make you a living, because you're not going to get recognition. Gets you, cup of coffee. Yeah. So, but I didn't think that it was going to be something that would be that big for us. The kind of our initial goal was maybe to get us like $1,000 a year. We knew like there was advertising opportunities. I had like an interest in it. Like this is something I thought as a librarian, because I was working as a full-time librarian then, was that this would be good for the community. If you were a scholar, this could be a kind of a public good. And then we kind of just kind of started it off, and it was a time when kind of social media was just starting. So we really benefited from the fact that we could get on Facebook and we could get on Twitter. And those were the two ones that kind of propelled us to a lot larger than we kind of expected.
So I've known you for some time, and I remember when you and Sandra first started MiddleMedivist.net, we were in a car ride or something, and one of you said that your ultimate goal was to make enough money to be able to afford to go to the big medieval conference every year. And since that conference was in Michigan and you were on Toronto, it wasn't exactly, that wasn't an unbelievable goal.
Yeah.
When did you? That
was our $1,000. Right.
That was your $1,000. Yeah. So when did you realize that this had the potential to go way beyond your initial ambitions?
Probably about 6 months in. They just the kind of content, like I think the first month we made about $8 in revenue, second month like 25, but then it's 100, 150. And as like our Facebook audience kept growing exponentially, right, that we could just see the numbers going into, and it was at that point it's like, all right, we have to kind of figure out better ways to amortize, right? Like just to make it better for making revenue, right? Because we just didn't have that mindset, right? Like, how do you make it from a kind of a simple website to something a little more complex that's better for get people to click on ads? We started we added Amazon affiliates to ourselves, and we kind of were looking at different ways of making revenue. But we were, every month it was just kind of picking up steam. So, you just started working a little less as a librarian. You put in a little more time. You were looking for, all right, what content actually works, right? Because the early days were, we were just kind of putting up links to articles and a little bit of news, and we weren't adding very much ourselves, like any real content that we can produce ourselves. But as we learned to produce content ourselves, that really started driving up our numbers.
So I want to ask about that specifically. So you were used to researching and writing and editing and that kind of thing already. So I guess ultimately for the writers out there who are now going to enter into a world where in 2008, it was maybe a little radical to think we're going to produce things which only exist in kind of a digital form, or mostly exist there. To today, the students who are graduating out of this class will, that's going to be their main bread and butter. So how is that writing different? What advice would you give to students who are trying to write for digital media differently than print? And of course, you also edit for a print magazine, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah. This is the print magazine, Medieval Warfare. So
Yes,
it's
right.
physical.
Mhm.
People can, yeah. The most important thing is to be versatile, being able to, go from kind of one topic to another fairly seamlessly, to be able to, be able to write about stuff that makes connections to current events or interests and things like that. So when the pandemic kind of comes across, it's all right, how do although how it's a little morbid, like it's like, all right, like we gotta write more about the Black Death. Yeah, we have to, because that's what people are interested in, right? And they're looking for those connections, and that's what people like. We did a couple of articles, and one of them did very, very well just with Google. People searching Black Death and COVID-19, and we came kind of towards the top of that list. So that brought in, thousands and tens of thousands of new readers. So being able to kind of have that, also being able to figure out how to hook your readers, like just in the online world. And this is one of the big differences with the print, is the online world, you have to hook them in really quickly. So, and you only have you got two real opportunities: your title and your first couple sentences. So, because most people if the title doesn't interest them, they won't click on it. First couple sentences, if that doesn't interest them, they're gone, right? Because your typical user only lasts 1 to 2 seconds on your website, right? And this is true in all cases. Like most articles don't get read to the end. Lots of people will share articles without reading them. I know I'm guilty of that too.
Yeah.
So.
Does it help for the writer to try to essentially rehook the reader as they go? Or once that initial read begins, is there very little they can do to get them to go to the end if they're not going to do that already?
Yeah, I think there are little tricks that, as an editor, you kind of put in to keep them going, like making the paragraphs a little shorter, adding in visuals is important. Like with our website, I usually have articles that are 2,000 words long. We will break them up with YouTube videos that are somewhat related to the topic. We'll have images, we will have headers. Those things are quite important, just to keep that kind of flow into the kind of piece. So yeah, you do have to kind of find ways of keeping them interested and not being able to lose their track as they go along. So yeah.
Yeah, I guess for something like Medieval Warfare magazine, I mean, this is a very niche audience. People are going to subscribe to Medieval Warfare magazine, right? So if you already have subscribed and it's sitting in your hand, you're committed to it, right? But
that's right.
The online world, you have no commitment to the thing that you're clicking on.
Yeah, and you can see that the opening paragraphs of Medieval Warfare magazine are what we a regular kind of paragraph. One of the things I have to do most with online is to rewrite the opening piece in the post. And we have we typically hire historians. We have young career just starting their careers. We have kind of more well-known writers, and in all cases, I wind up having to rewrite the first couple of sentences to kind of hook people in.
What is the so I'm a student and I'm watching this and I'm thinking, well, all right, I want to sell something. I want to make sure that the editor, when they look at it, isn't immediately like, I'm gonna have to rewrite the beginning of this. So what would be the big pitfalls you'd say? Whatever you do, don't do this thing.
Oh, in online, think of way, like, you don't want to have really lengthy paragraphs. You don't want to assume that the reader already knows your topic. Most readers will not, like, most people like do not know about Chaucer in the world. So they, you know, or how to build a car, right? Like, and you'll get those readers too, right? Those are easy people to catch, but you need to catch as many people as you can. So you have to kind of make it kind of relevant. I think when you're talking to your editor, you say like, oh, this is why this is kind of a useful thing. Like what makes it an interesting article right now? And that could be like, hey, I've got a new book coming out on the topic, or there is something going on in the world that relates to it. If you don't have those things, that makes it harder to kind of pitch an article, right? It has to have, you know, some sort of currency or value to what's going on today.
So let's say that's actually the next thing I want to ask you about. It has to do with the idea of pitching articles. So I know you do have some people on staff at MiddleMedivist.net, but it seems to me that the majority of your content is produced by people writing freelance for you. Would that be right?
Yeah, like we have what we'll call columnists that like do 1 or 2 pieces a month, and then I do have a lot of people that come off pitching pieces to me, and sometimes I say yes, sometimes I say no. A lot of the people that pitch me are like generic writers, and like they have a generic email. I love your website, MiddleMedivist.net. It has been a great, like, no, you know, like, I kind of ignore that. But, you know, like, I do have people that say, hey, I'm a student. I really want to write about, you know, like these topics. And like, I will say, all right, pitch me some ideas, right? And they may pitch me about something very, very narrow. Here is this manuscript from the 14th century, and I want to talk about, you know, this, you know, small little bit about this manuscript. No, that's not going to get me any readers, unfortunately. So, you know, I gotta say, like, how are you, you know, how you have to kind of turn to me, like, you know, how people get like interested into this topic.
So, when people are pitching to you, what percentage of pitches would you say you end up accepting?
Maybe 25%.
Okay. So most pitches are not going to succeed. So, I mean, one thing that in the various, we've talked to people in various writerly positions, and one thing they keep saying is, if you're going to get rejected more often than you are accepted. And that sounds like that's accurate.
Yeah. Like the other problem is people pitch really overly broad topics. Like, I want to write about the 100 Years' War. Okay. And yeah, I'm going to tell you all about it. And I like, no, you can't tell me that in like 1,500 words. Like, what are you going to say? You know, and that's what like the very generic writers, right? Like, that's how, you know, I need, from our audience, we expect that our audience knows something about the Middle Ages, you know, coming in, or they have some interest in it. So we won't, you know, we don't need too many really introductory kind of pieces. And I don't think anyone does. Like, even in my magazine, it's really hard to kind of get that kind of, you know, anything that's already like Wikipedia-able, right? That is unnecessary. Like, you're always looking for stuff. Like, I'm always looking for stuff that isn't repeatable on other sites, right? That, you know, this is not information that you could get anywhere, you know.
So it sounds like, if I'm hearing what you're saying right, that in fact, not just for you, but you think generally there really isn't that much of a market for people just talking generally about things. And perhaps if a student wants to become a writer, they need to find a niche area that they become very familiar with.
Like, yeah, I think, you know, the one big thing is there's lots of stuff already written out there, and Wikipedia is a great resource, but it's a big competitor too. It's like our biggest competitor. You know, they kind of dominate like all the kind of terms. So nothing I can put there could beat it. So I have to kind of look for a little more narrow. I have to look for an angle into the topic, right? So, and I think that's general. Like, you know, it's you have to find ways of get people. Why should you read this piece right now? And will it do well social media wise? Because yeah, there's two kind of ways you get audience. It's your social media audience, or you get your search engine optimization audience. Search engine, it's a lot tougher. You know, it's something like as an editor, you're constantly battling and trying to keep up with. But so yeah, you want to get like your kind of audience of people on social media that say, hey, this is really good, let's click on it. Like get retweets, get likes, get people sharing it on other venues. That matters.
So how do you, so one of the things that students I think struggle with is a lot of what they end up seeing is clickbait, very sort of over the top clickbait. And your website will occasionally run the, you know, the little quiz or that kind of thing, but that's the real minority of what you have there. So how, without the sort of normal sort of what we normally think about as clickbait, what are the kind of more, I don't know how to say it, but respectable, I suppose, ways to drive people to read your article?
Like clickbait is something we did a lot more, especially maybe 5 years ago, and we had a larger audience back 5 years ago. But it's a very thin audience, right? Like where they kind of leave. So you don't want to necessarily do that. So you are looking for people that when they write, they say something of importance. They offer a bit of an opinion, but they can back it up, have interesting facts. Doesn't necessarily mean that they have to have read quite a lot, you know, because you could do a piece about like a single story or a single place, right? You know, like I often will do pieces. Here is this quirky thing from this 11th century story, and I'm going to write a bit about it. Like I only had to read about that and maybe have a little bit of general knowledge about the Middle Ages, but I can make something out of that that's interesting to the reader. So yeah, you know, and you know, like, but like, I would say, like, you know, don't put yourself past doing clickbait stuff, right? Especially, you know, like you know, here are our lists. Here's the top 10 list. That's always has something interest. Like, you know, if I did clickbait stuff, I try and make it better than the clickbait that's out there. So one of my best posts is here, like, there's like, here are the most important events in the Middle Ages. You know, there's lots and lots of lists of 10. Here are like 5 or 10 important events. You know, I did 50. So,
right.
You know, and I wrote like a paragraph about each one, and yeah, it does really well. Like it gets a lot of clicks. So, but that piece is better than anything else out there, and that's why it gets strong.
So, I'm a freelance writer, and I'm going to reach out to you. And there's several things that you said that the writers need to emphasize. Like, presumably, once they've already sold an article to you, you start to develop a relationship with them, or not, right? Yeah. But some things you talked about are their description of who they are and why they care about this, what they expect the reader to get out of it, or what their angle is on it. Of those things, like, so like I have an idea, and I'm going to write to someone. I'm going to reach out, you know, through a website, maybe to a content manager or an editor to pitch my idea. Which of those things would you say is, I guess I'm asking you to rank the clickbait, give a sense of how important are those different things?
I think first is that you have to personalize your thing, that person knows it's not just some generic letter, right? because I've read them, or like I've read the generic stuff 1,000 times,
Yeah.
right? So it just, I'm reading that letter like within the first line, right? So I think the first line should be, I have this background in this field. You know, you can then, you know, like, you also, if you can, list examples, right? Like if I like, nearly all the writers I've hired, I've always looked on their academia edu page or their website, or just to see what they've done. Like, and like, even, like a lot of them don't even say that, you know, like they don't offer any kind of like, you know, like, when even the writer says, like, yeah, I'm involved in medieval history, like they don't link off to articles they've written. That's what I'm usually wind up looking at. It's all right. Can you, you know, I take a look at it, and does it come across well?
So they should kind of give a list of other things they've published elsewhere.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be in that topic, right? Like I think I'm just looking for competent writing. It has, you know, like when I look at it, does it read off like something that would be useful if they could turn their attention right to me like that?
Okay. So I want to ask you about something that none of our other speakers have really been able to speak to, which is that you have associated with your website a bunch of non-tech stuff that often has to have things written for it. You have an award-winning podcast. You have a great one, by the way. I think just passed its 100th episode recently, if I remember right.
That's right. Yeah.
And you have, as you said, a lot of YouTube videos and other sorts of video materials. What would you? I don't even know how to frame the question, because we haven't had other speakers to talk about this. So what would you think that students who are studying this should know about that? Is that mostly an issue about marketing your materials? Is that a different kind of writing that people might think of as their future? Like, how should we think about those kinds of materials?
Well, first of all, yeah, podcasting, being able to go on YouTube, are, you know, they are so important today. I think, you know, we consume media in so many different ways that you wind up, you know, need to find a ways to appeal, to get people to you know, listen, watch, read at the same time. In part, like the way we market, in the sense we market, like our main marketing focus now is get people to join like what we call like a Patreon, to kind of support us monthly, to be part of our community. That is almost exceeding our ad revenue. And eventually that's what we want to go. So we want to have people be able to consume media in different ways. And, you know, so a lot of people come in, yeah, I love the podcast, right? And so in terms of you know, like even with doing an interview style podcast, that's there's a lot of research that goes into it, a lot of prep, you know, being able to, you're not writing you're not doing writing that's going to be seen by the audience. You're writing to kind of figure out what's the podcast going to look like, what are you actually going to talk about. You have to have that already in kind of the back of your mind. How does it get presented, right? Like, you know, what's the title? Like, you know, me and like the podcast, you know, our podcasters, the biggest talking point is the title of the podcast. So, which is not settled until the end of the process, and also the intro. Like, how do you hook people into that just from reading? Because a lot of people, you know, that's how they find the podcast, is, oh, they're talking about this, I will listen.
Do you find that things like podcasts, you know, you talked about thin readers and thick readers. There's, say, people who just pop in for something, and then if you have subscribers, they're obviously very, very interested. Do you find that what happens with, say, podcasts or video stuff is that there are people out there who would be thick readers who they don't know about you, and you capture them that way? Or do you find that you develop someone who was a thin reader who wasn't that interested, and over the course of this other thing, they become interested enough to subscribe?
Yeah,
do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, it's more of the latter. You know, like you start building into them. They say, and this is from the feedback you get. They say, you know, I started listening. I got into the articles that you did. I found your other stuff. You know, then I found your Patreon. It amazes me that people don't find everything at once, right? Because yeah, like I think, you know, especially if you're trying to get people to, you know, put down a little bit of money each month to support you, that takes time. Like they're not going to do it on like one listen or two listens. You have to keep pitching to them. You know, this is how this site works. This is, if you want more of this, you will have to, you know, this is how you can help bring it about. This is how you can be a part of it, how you can have influence over it. So you are constantly, and so people tend to kind of like, yeah, I love it. I've been following, you know, I've been following you for years, right? Like, and that's how I started. And like my biggest joy is when people say, I started reading MiddleMedivist.net, and that's why I took medieval studies in university. So you know, that is really awesome to know.
So you said something that was very interesting that I think might be really helpful for students to hear, which is that you said you're always pitching to the audience. And as a writer or a staff, whether you're a staff writer or a freelance writer, you're thinking about you're pitching yourself to the editor, but you're actually offering them something they can pitch to the public as well, either the general public or the specific sort of audience there. And I think that might be really helpful for people to think about, because there is, I think, from everything you've said, it seems like there's this building of relationships, you know, while you're building relationships with the writers, you're trying to build relationships with an audience.
Yeah, like, and you know, we have a term we call calls for action, right? And you're trying to have that in in everything you do. Your writer typically does not know, like, it's not important to them that people go onto my Patreon, right? That's not their focus. But I'm always looking for that ways. And it's that, you know, like people are pitching like about new books, you know, if, you know, like, because I can affiliate with these things, I can do better calls for action. You know, like that makes it a lot easier. But yeah, I am always on a kind of hunt to get people to, you know, go a bit into the magazine or into the website. Go into, you know, buying this item or something like that. Some things that writers are really helpful include links within their text. That here's a link to another article on MiddleMedivist.net. I find that very helpful as an editor. That like they went into my website and they found other things that are useful, and they've kind of done that work for me. Those things are really, really nice. So.
And honestly, it's not that much work for them as the individual writer compared to you, who is looking at the entire publication. Yeah.
Indeed. Yeah. So yeah, I'm always looking and say, I have to kind of place. So like I have to even figure out how I'm going to place what, where, and when. Like you know, like an online. You know, I can't clump too many military articles together. I can't, you know, clump too many articles about England at one place. I have to kind of spread things out. So, you know, those things kind of matter to me. So like, you know, I kind of sit on I sit on articles for like a few weeks at a time. Like in a digital medium, like there's no reason me put up like an article, not like wait on an article. Like you can literally put it up to tomorrow. Like I get it, I'll put it up tomorrow, if I have the time, that is. But you know, but otherwise, like I'm trying to kind of figure out. I've got, you know, 4 or 5 articles. You know, all right, when do I want these to go out? Because, and I'll have an idea. Like some will do better than others. Like, you know, some topics are just a little more interesting. They'll pull in audiences. So what time of the day will it go out? Like, will it go out on Sunday or will it go out like on a Tuesday afternoon? So those things kind of matter on that.
So to sort of bring everything to a conclusion here, what would you say if after listening to this and hearing all the things you had to say, what is the call to action? What's the takeaway you have that you would like, aspiring writers aspiring writers to know or to think about?
I think you want to tell them like how versatile they can be to you as an editor. Like, can I write about lots of things within your niche, or am I going to be just here for like, can I just do one thing, right? Hopefully, that's one thing you have to learn is the more you can write about numerous topics, and at least if not, be intimate with the details, be able to research it and kind of figure out quickly, because and we're not asking people to spend days on a topic. You're not getting paid enough. So, but do you have the kind of research abilities that you can kind of put something together in a few hours of research and writing, make it worth your while, and it have some uniqueness to the topic? Like, can you write with a little slant that makes it a little different? Is there a good way to pitch or hook your article when you tell your editor, this will work because, and you will get a lot more response. So, and also keep your word limits down.
To what would be the longest you'd want someone to
go? Right now, a good article is about 2,000 words online. I wind up getting lots longer articles because some of my writers just tend to be like that. But for an online article, a very good thing right now is about 2,000 words.
Okay.
And that's changed too, right? It used to be 1,000.
Yeah, and so there's more movement to longer form pieces than there used to be.
Yeah. And that's because that's what Google picks up, and and people are a little more engaged in social media that way. Also, be on social media yourselves. If you haven't written anything, at least get yourself on Twitter or Instagram, or I'm doing TikTok now. So
I was not aware of that. So and how are you finding that as a new medium?
It's really interesting. I love watching TikTok. I find it really difficult because I'm not a super digital native. So I'm kind of putting my toe into it and doing some things, and I just want to see if I can capture audience. So, but yeah, if you can kind of put into yourself into social media, that makes it really helpful as defining your voice.
All right, great. Peter Konieczny, creator, researcher, founder of an extremely important website that really is the beginning of a media mini empire. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.